In this video, I want to share the answer to one of the questions I get asked most often. How did you become a Buddhist? I don't usually talk about it because, I already know, so it's not that interesting to me. But in this conversation with my friend and fellow Buddhist YouTuber Kyohei Mikawa, whose channel I will link below, you should totally go check it out. He's got some really creative videos. But we talk about this question together, so you'll hear my story and his story of really getting involved with Buddhism. Even though he was raised in Japan and had been familiar with Buddhism his entire life, it's still a really interesting story of getting deeply involved. So, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy.
Since you were little, you were already sort of, as a family too, with the siblings, interested in sort of a spiritual world, Buddhist ideas and so. How, like, yeah.
Well, no one was talking about Buddhism, but
Mm,
I think kids are just naturally curious about this stuff because they can feel there's something more to this world, you know?
I
Like if there is a
see.
matrix, I think kids would be the ones who would figure it out because they just have this like intuitive sense.
Mm,
So that I would say we did have, but I was raised fundamentalist
mm.
Christian. Uh Nobody was talking about Buddhism at home. Had to stumble across that later.
Oh, I see. How did you then become? Why did you choose become to be a Buddhist? What was that encounter? When did it
It's a good
happen?
question.
Yeah.
Well, when I was probably around 16, middle of high school, I finally just left Christianity because it didn't work for me. That whole fundamentalist idea that like this one relatively small sect of Christianity has the truth and no one else. Like we learned about why Catholics are going to hell, why Baptists are going to hell, like everyone but us was going to hell. Didn't work. So by the time I got to college, I was really questioning and just like open, just I think I was like a sponge, ready to soak in something new. And but I thought religion, like the religious studies section of the course catalog, I just assumed it was going to be like old people reading the Bible.
Mm.
And I was like, no, I'm not doing that again.
Uh-huh.
So when I took an East Asian cultures survey
Uh-huh.
course with three professors, and one of the professors assigned us a Buddhist
Mm.
text, then I was like, oh my God, this is different. I'm really interested in these questions. Not the answers even, just the questions. And that was it. I was sold.
I see. What kind of questions were, were raised back then in that class? Why?
Well, the
Yeah.
text
Yeah. Go ahead.
that we were
Yes.
assigned, it was actually she's my llama and she was my PhD advisor, Anne Klein, who was teaching that
Wow.
class. But she assigned
Mm.
us a text called The Questions of King Melinda,
Yes.
which is about,
Yeah.
yeah, you know that one?
Yeah. Buddha
So
nature.
good,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Go on. Go on. Go
Exactly.
on, Claire. Don't stop. Yeah. Go on.
Yeah. So the whole text is this dialogue between a Buddhist monk and a Greco-Indian
Yeah.
king. And the king, is trying to wrap his head around basically the idea of emptiness.
Mm.
And the monk is saying, like, you know, take your chariot as an example.
Yeah.
So it's a chariot, or we would say maybe a car these days. Where is the car? And the king is like, well, it's in the driveway. It's right there, duh. And the monk is like, well,
Right.
is the car the steering wheel? Is the car the left front tire? Is the car the right front tire? And if you just mentally deconstruct the car one piece at a time, at what point is there not a car
Mm.
anymore? Like when you're down to just one fender, is it a car? And to me, that was just like the most interesting question. I'd wondered about stuff like that, my whole life, and I just thought I was a weirdo, but it turns out I was a Buddhist.
I love it.
So, yeah, so it was like,
Oh.
the question of what am I? Am I my body?
Mm.
Is my body my left arm or my right arm or my right ear? Like, what happens if I lose my sight? Am I not me anymore? Just those things I found really interesting. And for anyone who's like, that's weird, why would anyone be interested in that? I think the reason it's so
Mm.
interesting is because when you start to investigate, as we were talking about earlier in the context of the
Mhm.
Matrix video, the whole reality that we've kind of stuck together with duct tape, it starts falling apart, and in the cracks there's this luminosity.
Mm.
There's like reality itself that can start to shine through, and who doesn't want to explore that?
Exactly. Exactly. Take the red pill, right?
Yes, exactly.
Wow, wow. That was in the college. It sounds like a spiritual, so powerful encounter with the Buddhism back then. There, really,
Yeah.
wow. I feel really like a huge, intense moment of excitement. You felt spiritual excitement.
Yeah,
Wow,
it was that for me, definitely.
got it, got it. And I remember in that Matrix video, you for the first time watched the Matrix not in your homeland, but in a Thailand, right? In the Buddhist monastery.
Yeah.
So you have a travel experience in Thailand, and upbringing in the U.S. Yeah, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you have a really travel experience. So are they because of the Buddhist related travels?
Yeah, definitely.
So what happened after you got?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was I was raised in Texas. I went to my undergrad university years at Rice, which is in Houston, Texas. I had traveled with my family before, but my senior year of college, I did a Tibetan study abroad program.
Mm.
So that was my first introduction to like traveling in Asia. And like as a group, we landed in India, we spent time in Tibetan refugee communities, we lived with Tibetan families. We went to Tibet. It was just, it like blew my mind. So yeah, after that, I came back, but I was very motivated to go back to Asia at some
Mm.
point. And so the first chance I got basically was to go back to Thailand. Well, to go to Thailand, I'd never been. I got to go with my teacher, who is a Thai monk, and his sister and his friends, and just everybody from like his home monastery. We kind of all traveled together in this big group through Thailand, and then I ended up, staying in this monastery, Wat Pa Nanachat, in the northeast of Thailand, where it's a monastery for international monastics for
Mm.
monks. So that's why my sister reminded me actually of this the other day after she watched the
Mhm.
video about the Matrix. She said, I guess I had said this at the time, that they watch one movie a year in that monastery. And that year it was The Matrix. So it was another reason that I like felt the Buddhist resonance of that film.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I see. I see. So you went to Tibet for the first time in a college senior year program.
Yeah.
Got it. What did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Why was it mind blowing to you?
It was my first real immersion experience in an Asian culture. I mean, I think that was part of it, just to feel how different things could be from the culture that I was raised in. But another big part of it too, like just being totally honest, I feel a strong karmic connection to Tibet. I feel like I may have had a previous life in the Tibetan culture, and it
Mm.
just kind of felt like going home, like
Nice.
that's that sense of like, oh, this is what it's supposed to feel like to like go through life. And yeah. So then when I came back home to the US, I was like, I don't fit here, do I?
Wow, I see. Yeah, that's very wonderful. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
In your life, if there's any moment in which you even feel, oh, this is where I was in my past life, that's really lucky. I mean, I fortunately had a chance to feel that as well. I've been in Chicago for more than 12 years or so. Was born and raised in Japan, so it's really weird. Every time I ask application to my grad school, that happens to be in Chicago, and I'm in Chicago for, I probably was a Buddhist in Chicago in the past or something like that.
That's so
I think I was an
funny.
American in the past. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Oh, how
I know.
funny.
But it's really fortunate. Yeah.
I mean, Yeah, it makes total sense. I mean, there have been, especially the Chicago Divinity School. It's a
Mm.
very famous program, and their religious studies program is really great. Um, it's just funny that we kind of have like mirror images of
Right,
this, where you come to Chicago and feel at home.
right. Exactly. Right, right, right. Right, right, right. We might be doing the same reverse in our next life when I see you.
Exactly. And connect again through some incredible technology we haven't even dreamed up yet.
Right. That's right. That's right. So after you, so how did you, okay, uh, in your tradition, Tibetan Buddhism, do you choose a particular like a group that you belong to? How did your Buddhist journey start from there? And after you're in the middle of college, you started to belong to this particular Tibetan Buddhist community.
Yeah, well, to be honest, when I first started practicing Buddhism, I practiced in the Theravada
Mm,
tradition because I was still pretty burnt by like the idea of religion.
mm.
And the Tibetan tradition is very like devotional. There's a lot of images and a lot of, you know, love and respect that you're supposed to feel. And I was just like, I want to keep it
I
simple.
see. Yeah, yeah. Go on. Yeah, yeah. I see. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
So the excuse me,
Mm.
the first few
Mm.
years really that I practiced Buddhism, I was just much more comfortable in that cooler, calmer, more sober Thai Thai tradition.
That's right.
But I think that karma, you just can't get it out. I was always interested in Tibetan Buddhism. I stayed in touch with my Tibetan sangha. For me, I didn't really choose the branch of Tibetan Buddhism to belong to. Just I connected with Anne, and then I started going to her sangha. And I think that's kind of typical, honestly, for how people find and connect with a teacher. You might sit with a lot of different teachers or take teachings from a lot of different people, but you feel a click. You feel a connection with somebody. Or if you're a beginner, maybe you're just you just need somebody to start you out. So I think it's good to feel that connection with somebody. But also, in the Tibetan tradition, if you go into the more advanced practices, there's a really strong bond between teacher and student. So it is important to spend the time to get to know that person, to not like jump all the way in right away, but to kind of make sure that you're noticing, what are the dynamics in their sangha. Does this person ever ask me to do things that are a little bit, maybe unethical or questionable? So it's good to take some time. And for me, really, it was several years between the time that I met Anne and also her husband Harvey, who run Don Mountain Center for Tibetan Buddhism, that I'm still a member of. Yeah, it took a while, but I completely trust them now, however many 20 some odd years later.
I see, I see. That's really rich experience of your spiritual journey in Buddhism. Would you say that from the viewpoint of having already practiced Buddhism in a Thai community, primarily a Theravada tradition, and having already been a practice and become a teacher in your Tibetan Buddhism tradition, would you say that your former experience of practicing Buddhism with Thai monks was helpful for you to become who you are now? If so, in what way?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to
Yeah.
clarify, I'm a community instructor for Don Mountain. So like with Tibetan Buddhism, a fully qualified teacher might be a lama or, really somebody deeply accomplished, and I am not that. I'm just, somebody who can teach some of the basic stuff and help people, start down their Dharma path. But I think it was 100% helpful for me to start with the Theravadan tradition because well, first of all, there wasn't that much to distract me. Like there weren't like tons of different Buddhas and different
Mm,
practices. It's really like you sit with your mind and you really learn how to sit, silently. You learn the basics of calm abiding and special insight, shamatha and
mm,
vipassana meditation. And I feel like I really got grounded in like the bedrock of the Dharma. And I think had I started with Tibetan Buddhism, there's just so much stuff to learn. I think I would have had an easier time staying in my head for longer. So I think, anyone who's coming from my background, maybe raised in a religious tradition that left a few scars, I think
Mhm.
I have no hesitation in recommending, Theravada practice or any other form, but like something about the simplicity of Theravada that I found really like safe and comforting.
Wonderful to hear that. Yeah, so what you shared just now in this interview and your journey of Buddhism really resonates with probably so many viewers who have a different background. And you, I received what you shared with me right now, just now, as sort of saying everyone's background, spiritual background, family background, racial, every kind of background is different. And that background is okay. And that's a unique individual contribution to
Yeah.
make your own spiritual journey more meaningful. Without you're missing that, where you're coming from, you're missing the entire journey. So that Buddhist
Yeah.
journey you're expressing really integrates the past of all of us into the present moment of Buddhist practice.
Yeah, I'm curious. I mean, I know that you were born in
Mm,
Japan and probably
yeah.
raised there. I'm guessing you must have been exposed to the Dharma from a young age. I'm curious, how did you decide to become as involved as you are? It seems like it's really important in your life. So how did that journey happen
Yeah,
for
thank you,
you?
thank you. So I was raised and born in a Buddhist organization called Rissho Kosei-Kai, centered in Tokyo. I was raised in my hometown Sapporo, in Japan. Sapporo is the north side of Japan. It's not a lot like in Chicago. And because I was third generation of that Buddhist organization, my mom really took me to a local Dharma center when I was little. But I was really not like into that Buddhist practice. I in high school and college, and so I just rather want to play in a band and don't want to go to the Dharma center or something like that. But one day when I was attending a lecture at the Dharma center, my local Dharma center, my mentor, um, who turned out to be my mentor, was lecturing about the importance of Buddhist teaching of dependent co-arising and the teaching of no self, which is, of course, it's not the denial of the self. It's not the non-existence of the self, but it's the emptiness of the self. For that's not to be attached to your old identity. That's a suggestion that he was making. It really opened up my mind. Back then I was really struggling with the growth of my level of English speaking language. I majored in English, but I couldn't, make progress at all. So I was kind of self-denying myself and so on. But he said in that lecture, you cannot change what happened to you in the past, but you can certainly change the meaning of what happened to you in the past. That was really powerful.
Oh,
And I thought,
wow. You can't change what happened to you, but you can change the meaning
yeah,
of it. Wow. What does that mean to you?
yeah. So it meant, oh, even though I used to dislike myself, I used to deny a lot something, about my own self, which is things I don't like about myself. But that will be able to be transformed into a meaningful aspect of myself so that I can, in the future, embrace and accept who I am, even though I used to deny who I am. So that was really uplifting and liberating. So I thought, oh, maybe Buddhist resonates with me, even though I was raised in Japanese, Buddhist more heavily presence in Buddhism there, but really didn't encounter with the depth of the teaching. So I became, after graduation from college, I became on the staff of, my
Mm.
YouTube channel is not the representation of any official view of my Buddhist sangha, but I'm doing just for, talking about Rissho Kosei-Kai from a personal perspective.
That's that's so fascinating. I'm really struck by the resonances between our two stories, even though they're from such different cultures. Um, just the fact that there's such similar elements, and I suspect it's probably the same for everybody who becomes deeply involved in the Dharma. Like, it doesn't matter if you were born into that culture, born into a culture that thought, oh, you're going to go to hell if you practice that, it finds you and it clicks, and there's something you can't walk away
You're
from.
right. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And also, yeah, some people told me like, oh, you're a Buddhist, you're gonna go to hell from some other religious traditions. But now we know the Buddhist cosmology of 6 realms of existence, hell, hungry ghost, and so on. Our role as a bodhisattva must go to the hell to liberate and cooperate with all sentient beings. So if people say and critique you and say, "Hey, you're gonna go to hell," I'm like, "Yeah, you don't go there. It's not important to go to
Right,
hell,
right.
right?"
You're not compassionate enough to go help those folks.
Right. So really, yeah, theologically prepares for me as well. Yeah, to make every single conversation meaningful with with those minded folks.
Oh, that's so much more compassionate than my response when people tell me that.
How would you respond? How would you say?
I think my initial response is just like aggressive, like, don't tell me that.
Mm.
I heard enough of that when I was, 10 years old. But it's just a knee-jerk response. It's like, that's the thing that happened, but can I make a different meaning out of it?
Right. Oh yeah, thank you. That was the topic we were talking about. Exactly. Yeah, so the change, right, that was really weird. The change in the meaning of the past. My struggle with, learning English doesn't change, but the meaning of my struggle changes. Oh, I used to deny that experience, but because of that struggle, thanks to that struggle, I can now speak better or something like that.